Okay, welcome everybody. As usual, I'll just read out the following message regarding etiquette for tonight. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording is archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can you please put your hand up if you can be seen on screen or use the yellow raise hand function. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of the chair or Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then let the chair or Democratic Officer know. If you have a webcam, then try turning that off, as this will help with broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth so you can at least hear and be heard. Okay, so thanks everyone for coming. We'll kick right off. So Liz, is there any apologies for absence?
None through to myself, Chair.
Okay, and I've got
one from Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Hennessy, I believe. Go on.
Russell Godfrey.
Councillor Godfrey. Thank you very much. Any other apologies for absence? Councillor Penn.
Thanks, Chair. Not apologies, but I will have to leave early. Other meeting scheduled.
Okay, thank you very much. No, thank you. Agenda item 2, the minutes of the meeting held on 9th of February. I'm happy to propose those if we've got a seconder.
I'll second them, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. Agenda item 3, any declarations of interest for this evening? None. Lovely. Thank you, everyone. So we'll move straight on to agenda item 4, CSC, the curriculum for Wales, our termly update with some special guests.
Diolch yn fawr, Chair. This is a termly update that we have on the Curriculum for Wales. So we're joined tonight by Kath Lewis, the Principal Improver Partner for Curriculum Cohesion and Assessment. So she's going to be giving an update on the Curriculum for Wales. And we're also joined by Laura Taylor, Head Teacher of St Joseph's Roman Catholic Primary School. And she'll be outlining the curriculum journey that they've undertaken as a school and also as a cluster. So I'll pass over now to Kath. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr, noswaith dda bawb. Okay, so quite a short update from me, and you'll notice some of the updates get shorter and shorter as we now progress further into rollout and Curriculum for Wales is the curriculum. So just a few things from me. So Curriculum for Wales is mandatory now for all primary schools and special schools in Wales. That happened in September 2022. That was the date for rollout. Secondary schools and pupil referral units had the option of rolling out in September 22 to Year 7, or they could delay and roll out in September 2023, but doing so then for Years 7 and 8 concurrently. In the Vale of Glamorgan, 3 secondary schools opted to roll out to Year 7 this academic year, so from September 2022. We're starting to see some lovely examples of effective emerging practice from schools across the Vale in relation to Curriculum for Wales. Schools are continuing in designing, implementing and refining their curricula, their teaching and their assessment, ensuring all of those meet the needs of the learners within each of their contexts. Cluster working is a key policy priority for Welsh Government, ensuring there's continuity of learning along that 3 to 16 learning continuum, with schools and settings working collaboratively to design curricula that build on prior learning. So ensuring there is access to either non-negotiable or agreed knowledge, skills and experiences, working from the age of 3 right through then in that continuum up to the age of 16. CSC are really privileged to have already supported a number of Vale clusters in that work, and we continue to be available to provide bespoke support to all clusters in building their curriculum, their teaching and assessment. How do we know schools are progressing well? How do they know? Self-evaluation and the new arrangements, the new Welsh Government framework for evaluation, improvement and accountability are really key to that. And for schools, governing bodies, regional consortia, dioceses, local authorities to get to know that new guidance is really important. So we in the regional consortia, along with dioceses and local authority colleagues, play a central role in supporting schools with that. Each school has a nominated improvement partner from CSE, and also all schools are able to access for free a comprehensive professional learning offer and bespoke support. So that's it from me. I know who you'd really like to hear from is Laura, so that we can have that school-based perspective. I'm sure many of you will know Laura Taylor, head teacher of St Joseph's Roman Catholic Primary School in Penarth. You'll have heard of the school. They have been very much engaged with Curriculum for Wales from its inception, so both as a pioneer school, but then within their own professional learning processes and systems, they have engaged heavily with support that we've been able to provide from CSE, but they've also fed into shaping that support as well with us. So I'll pass over to Laura, who will tell you a little bit more about St Joseph's curriculum development work.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm just going to share my screen, hopefully. I can't see anybody now. Can I ask if you can see my PowerPoint, please, Catherine?
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
can see it, Laura.
Thank you, great, thank you. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for the invitation to join you this evening. I'm going to, I've been told I have to speak very quickly and I'll make sure it's under 10 minutes, so I'll do my best. But I'm going to share with you our journey to 2022 as the curriculum came in, our model, and the work that we've been doing in school and with our cluster. So our journey to 2022 model consists of 6 components at St Joseph. So as a Catholic school, the model focuses on the pupil's relationship with God the Father, God the Son and God the Holy Spirit, and this is at the heart of all that we do. The 4 purposes are foundational to all our work, as well as developing the virtues of the pupil profile that we have at school. Our curriculum vision is to develop a coherent and progressive curriculum that is knowledge-rich, develops skills and provides engaging experiences to open minds and broaden horizons. And we do this in a variety of ways across all areas of learning and experience and through the work of our highly effective school parliament, which through authentic pupil voice improves the school, supports the local community and works towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But that's for another presentation. We also aim to provide excellent professional learning for all our staff members, and we regularly evaluate all dimensions of our school using the Schools as Learning Organisations model. And finally, in terms of our model, we are committed to working towards the national and regional priorities, as well as our own school priorities, ensuring excellence and equity for all, and following a continuous school improvement cycle. So in my presentation today, I'm going to focus more on the curriculum element, both our curriculum journey at school and more recently with our cluster. So as I've said, St Joseph's knowledge-rich curriculum is coherent, progressive and rigorous. And through immersive domain units, pupils are introduced to topics and themes and which enable them to gain knowledge and develop skills in each of the 6 areas of learning and experience, which I'll just say AOLE for now. Carefully planned learning activities provide stimulating and enriching experiences for the pupils that commit key information to long-term memory and develop curiosity, imagination and creativity. So the school's curriculum map was developed by a curriculum development team, and this comprised of 6 teachers across the school. The curriculum offer includes input from pupils, parents, staff members and governors about what pupils should know, be able to do, and which attributes they should develop. And furthermore, as I mentioned earlier, the St Joseph's School Parliament is also pivotal in giving pupils an authentic opportunity to learn about children's rights and democracy, improve our school, support the local community and work towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, developing the characteristics of the 4 purposes of the curriculum, most notably of an ethical and informed citizen of the world. So when we began redesigning our curriculum journey approximately 6 years ago now, with all our stakeholders, we evaluated how effectively the school curriculum at the time developed the 4 purposes, provided enriching experiences and built on prior knowledge and skills. And following that evaluation, we decided that our key priority was to develop a curriculum which builds systematically a framework of knowledge acquisition and develops extensive vocabulary and wide-ranging literacy and numeracy skills. All stakeholders were provided with the opportunity to identify the knowledge, skills and attitudes that they wanted the pupils of St Joseph's to develop. The overarching question was, by the time they leave St Joseph's School, what should pupils know, be able to do, and what attributes should they have? We shorten this to know, do, be. We established the curriculum development team, and knowing that we wanted to develop a vision and rationale for change based on research and evidence-formed practice, we read widely. And on the screen, you can see some of the key reading that has informed our practice over the past few years. Now on the screen, you can see an overview of our more recent post-COVID journey to date. And it's important to be aware really that our school and as a cluster, we are very much still on that journey, constantly reflecting and refining our work and moving it forward. So I'm going to share key parts of this journey with you today. But what's been really important about it and our current practice really, and it has been the professional dialogue that's ensued both at school level and at cluster level, and that's been really invaluable in our design process. I'm going to use the humanities area of learning and experience to exemplify our journey, but we followed the same process for all of the areas of learning and experience. So our journey towards a better understanding of progression in humanities area of learning experience began with our vision. And at school level, we had already reviewed our school vision, our Curriculum for Wales model and our general curriculum vision. So it made sense then to use this to consider what our area of learning and experience visions would be. And each area of learning experience considered how the AOLE aligned with the school and curriculum vision, what the AOLE was about, why it was important, and what the AOLE looks like at St Joseph's. And this included specific knowledge and skills and experiences we considered as important to our school and how the AOLE was delivered. And following these discussions, an AOLE vision was written, which has formed a foundation of our curriculum work, something we keep reflecting upon as we make decisions about our curriculum design. After writing our AOLE visions and ensuring all staff had a thorough understanding and shared language of the characteristics of the 4 purposes, we considered the statements of what matter, and more importantly, the narrative underneath the headline. And as a staff, we discussed what concepts, big ideas or key themes are encompassed in those statements of what matter. And simply, we highlighted the narratives and began to create a table of ideas and concepts that would help us to develop the learning that might come from each statement of what matter, in this example in the humanities. Next, we considered as a staff what learning opportunities could be linked to each statement, and these may be learning opportunities that we were already providing or provision that we thought would enhance our curriculum. And we completed a SWOT analysis of our curriculum model, considering the work we had completed around the statements of what matter and evaluating our provision against the Designing Your Curriculum guidance on HUB. As I mentioned earlier, at the start of our journey, we also asked all our stakeholders what they think a pupil leaving St Joseph's should know, do and be, and we repeated this again in 2021, asking governors and cluster feeder school and colleagues in the CSC and local authority, and these ideas were incorporated into our long-term curriculum. We thought about how these ideas related to the statements of what matter, how they developed the 4 purposes. We couldn't do them all. How to train a dog was slightly out of our remit, but we ensured then that we talked about pets when we were studying home, families and animals. And as we refine our curriculum further, these views ensure that our provision is authentic and meets the needs of our learners. Our next stage was to work towards an AOLE model. We looked back at successful futures and in particular the pedagogical principles. We RAG rated how well we judged our AOLE to meet the aspirations of the pedagogical principles, areas where we had effective examples of them and where we felt we could develop. And following this, we discussed what our AOLE looks like and how we assess pupils' progress in it. We discussed what you'd see in this example of humanities lessons, in pupils' books, online, the variety of formative assessment approaches, and how the humanities model was similar to or different from the other AOLE models. And finally, we explored the progression code and considered the strengths of our curriculum and ways that it aligns with the code and areas for development. It was at this stage then in our school journey that our cluster of schools met for the first time. And so to support our cluster and develop a shared language, we followed some similar steps of the journey. So as a cluster, we discussed the concepts, big ideas and key themes encompassed in the statements of what matter. We considered the learning experience that aligned with those key themes and big ideas, and we began to classify these ideas under knowledge, skills and experiences. Next task as a cluster then was to consider conceptual threads, and we explored the descriptions of learning for each statement of what matter and identified and named a conceptual thread, which the descriptions of learning exemplified and sequenced in each thread. And you can see on the screen some examples here for humanities like cause and effect and diversity. Our current stage on the cluster curriculum journey has been to consider what a learner looks like at each progression step for the statements of what matter, what knowledge, skills and experiences are needed to reach the progression step, and what subject, discipline, vocabulary you would expect to see. And so as a cluster, we have created cluster progression maps for experiences aligned with each statement of what matter, as you can see on the screen. And under each strand or descriptions of learning, we identified the knowledge and skills needed to reach the descriptions of learning at each progression step. So this work continues now as we ensure that all the principles of progression of the new curriculum are reflected in our progression maps, further work on subject, discipline, vocabulary, and we also want to consider what steps in learning are required before learners can align to a description at each progression step, and how do we get there. So finally on the screen you can see our progression model at St Joseph's. So as a humanities team we considered the principles of progression, the statements of what matter, and began to consider substantive concepts such as governance, conflict and disciplinary concepts such as chronology and place. As a cluster we have considered the descriptions of learning at each progression step and a coherent and progressive sequence of knowledge, skills and experiences, which is developed through those strands of the concepts. And finally, at school level, within the pedagogy and structure of learning, we value the importance of making links across learning and applying learning in new and challenging contexts and in robust formative assessment strategies, such as retrieval practice and multiple choice quizzes. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr, Laura. I think that was, exceptionally done, particularly within I think you were to the second on the 10 minutes. Thank you very much. I'll hand back to Caris or whether it's going back to Rhys. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say thank you, Laura, for sticking to the 10 minutes. It's very informative, and that's always a challenge, but you handled it very well. Is it all right if I'll go to councillors now just to ask Laura a few questions, if that's okay, and then we can loop back around if that's all right, Caris. Yeah, okay. Councillor Marshalsea.
Hello, thank you so much for that. It's really interesting to see how it actually is starting to be implemented. I'm just wondering, because obviously you're one of the people who's actually come directly from a school to talk to us. What have you found, and what do you think you will continue to find are the positives of the new curriculum, and what are the challenges of it?
Very good question. I think the positives have been really to do with the engagement of the school-to-school learning has been one of the biggest positives, that we're working so much more closely with our cluster of schools now, and that the children, whereas a challenge might be the freedom schools get across Wales to choose what the children learn, a positive is working in that cluster so that we can ensure that the children in the schools in the cluster have equity in terms of their knowledge, skills and experiences. So that's been a really positive part. The opportunity for I think much more with this new curriculum of being able to research and use evidence-informed practice that fits the vision of the school, and to be able to trial the ideas within that and implement them in a way that has an impact on the pupils, and then evaluate the success of those. So certainly the freedom to look at research and to use that in the best way that suits the needs of the pupils would be another real positive of it. And it's great to be able to broaden the children. I think with the constraints sometimes of the old national curriculum, it was difficult to have a really holistic approach for a child, especially in terms of the balance between, for example, maths and numeracy and expressive arts. And now we're in a position where we're able to ensure that all of those areas of experience have got equal importance, which is absolutely a positive as well. Challenges, it's probably not a great word today, but I'm going to say the budgets and funding. Not that that's anybody's fault particularly, but in order to continue to develop the curriculum and the staff that you need and the resources that you need, that's very challenging when budgets are tight, as they're going to be over the next year or so. So that's certainly a challenge. And as I said, really, it can be a challenge where to ensure that all children have that equity of knowledge, skills and experiences across Wales, and to ensure that they have that provision also is a challenge for us, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sort of really pleased to see the changes in that actually, you can listen to learners a lot more and what they would like to be learning about, because I know I taught in England for a long time, and moving from sort of Key Stage 2 down to what was called early years there, having that freedom as a teacher to actually be able to listen to the children and just teach based around that, I found just quite eye-opening, really. And so it's really positive to see it coming in across more levels, really. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Naomi. Councillor Goodjohn.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It's wonderful to hear and see it. It was very quick, but it's so well organised and so well put together. It's wonderful. I was just wondering if you'd had any feedback from the children now it's implemented and it's going forward, and what they're thinking and feeling about it now. Thank you.
So we regularly have opportunities for listening to learners, and when we're looking at, obviously looking at specific aspects of what we're teaching. So, for example, one of the ways that we teach what we call our domain learning is through immersive experiences, and then we give a section for a knowledge-rich curriculum, and then they build it to writing, and then they have an express and create, and then they take part in a pupil-led inquiry. And the pupil-led inquiry, where the children are able to use all the knowledge that they've learned so far, to then begin to analyse and think critically and problem solve and to create their own inquiries. That's been something that the children have had a lot of input in designing. So we know in St Joseph's, our vision really is that we want the children to have such powerful knowledge that they are then able to use that knowledge to be creative and to think critically, but that the knowledge comes first. And so the children have been able to influence that as we go through, and all the time, really. The other week we were looking at our particularly our science and technology learning, and the children talked about how much they enjoyed having big questions, for example, to start their learning in the science and technology inquiry. And so we've introduced that into our humanities learning as well. So we're giving the children regular opportunities to influence the sort of pedagogy as well, really, as well as the things that they're learning about.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Payne.
Hiya. I just had a question about you at the beginning of your presentation. You said about the faith-based methodology, which I was interested in. So in terms of the new curriculum then, are you free to be as free as you like with that methodology? Is there a directive on it, or does it come from learners, from children and teachers? How does that progress?
So I suppose there's a difference between our curriculum for religion, values and ethics. So as a Catholic school, that's directed by the Bishops' Conference of England and Wales and the Archdiocese of Cardiff. So that is the curriculum, the curriculum directory of the knowledge and skills in religion, values and ethics, that's directed to us. But where we are more free now is that pedagogy. So we align our work with our humanities domain with our work in religion, values and ethics. So although the content is prescribed for us, the way that we teach it matches the rest of the way that we've developed the curriculum in terms of big questions, immersive experiences, and those sorts of things. And then that's separate to our ethos and our culture of our building the children's relationship with God, the way that they encounter God, the way that they develop in virtue, the way they put their faith into action, and that is for us as a school community, working with the Archdiocese to explore with the pupils as well. So and that's the pupil profile, the virtues, that's a Cardiff Archdiocesan directive, but the way that we help the children to grow in those virtues is at school level. So a mixture, I suppose.
Yeah,
if that
brilliant. That's a lovely answer. Thank you very much.
Okay,
that's very concise. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Any other questions for Laura? Oh, Councillor Birch.
Thank you. I thought that was really interesting. I'm a retired teacher, so I'm always interested in different approaches to how we get things done and how we allow and help children to acquire information. And I think this idea about what do we want the end result to be, what do we want those children to be as learners, and the various roads you've taken to get there, I think is really interesting. What I would ask you about is how do you incorporate things like additional learning needs into that journey? Because obviously the majority of children are going to be able to go on this journey, this learning journey. I mean, we're using all the jargon here, aren't we? This learning journey, and arrive at the end more or less as you want them to be, with the skills and the knowledge and the ability to inquire and so forth, and the similar information. So how do you incorporate additional learning needs into that?
I think that the way that the curriculum is designed and created incorporates the voice of those children first and foremost, but also through our sort of formative assessment, our scaffolding for those children, the differentiation for those children. They may not all, they don't all need to be on the same progression step as such. We track every child's progress and learning journey, and although they sort of are immersed in the same content and experiences, the support is given to them so that they can access and engage with it at the level that they're working, whatever year group that they're in. Obviously, our learning supporter systems are invaluable in that. We do a lot of so one of our focus in St. Joseph's is about the acquisition of vocabulary. So for our pupils that have additional learning needs, we do a lot of pre-teaching of that vocabulary in sort of separate sessions, so that when they come to a class session where they're hearing from the teacher and their peers about the content, they've already got the understanding of the vocabulary that they're going to hear, rather than hearing it for the first time. And then as well as pre-teaching, we would do reteaching as well. And so if there's something that a child hasn't, it's sort of vital for the child to understand in order to move on, and there's processes in place to reteach those things to those children as well. So yes, does that answer your question? And obviously, as with the additional learning needs, they have obviously their own school support plans and different targets in place, for some of those children as well. But we do our best to ensure they're included and engaged in the curriculum, the same as everybody else, and just travelling at a slightly different pace on the journey.
Right. No, thank you. That's really interesting. I was just thinking, actually, I'd be really interested to see, a kind of a plan of, a particular topic that you teach and how you do that and the differentiation you use. I'd be, from a kind of professional point of view, I'd be really interested in seeing that. I mean,
You're
I
welcome to
don't wanna-
visit.
I wasn't going to impose a visit on you, but no, I would be really interested. So if I could perhaps have a chat with either Caris or Catherine afterwards to to set that up, I would really find that interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhiannon. Any other questions? I assume, Helen, that's a legacy hand. Just one from me, Laura, just about, it's interesting in the cluster work, and obviously, as Catherine was saying, we're sort of getting right into the year and into the new curriculum. So how do you envisage, say, the rest of the year, the next few years, in terms of working with that cluster?
So we've done a vast amount of work in the last 12 months, and so in terms of our progression maps, which we're sort of calling the sort of non-negotiables for our schools, there's a little bit of work to do to ensure that they align with the progression, the principles of progression, some work on subject specific vocabulary. But eventually what we want to be able to do is design a common approach to assessment across our cluster, so that we can use the progression maps that we've completed so far to assess against, and then we're able to come back together. So we may do, for example, a different context. So one school might do the Romans and another school might do the Vikings, but because of the way that our progression maps are written, regardless of the time period in this example, that the schools will be able to bring examples of work that meet the descriptors of learning and the progression map, and we'll be able to sort of in its old sense that moderates the work together to find so comparing standards with each other, and also that a common assessment approach will then help the children as they go up into the high school to have similar assessments together. And then ideally, because we've got sort of set knowledge, skills and experiences at progression steps, the collaborative work in terms of actually designing schemes of work or a project together, we'll be able to do that much more easily because we've got a sort of set almost criteria from the progression map. So a cluster or a pair of schools will be able to join together to work on designing teaching ideas, learning experiences, sharing of resources around a particular theme if they choose something similar, but based on the work that's being produced. And of course, it's never ending really, and so in a couple of years time, perhaps what we've chosen in our cluster progression maps won't fit the needs of our learners then, and so we'll be back to reviewing the progression maps and the work, but lots of potential now. We're working together to have that joined up thinking, I suppose, across the cluster.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Laura. Really interesting. I don't think there's any other you've obviously answered the question so well. There's no other questions from the councillors, but I think handing back to Caris at this stage.
Thanks, Chair. There's nothing I want to add really, just to thank Laura and Kath for their update, and Laura in particular for taking the time to outline the work as a school and cluster. So diolch yn fawr to both of you.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming in. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Diolch. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Okay. Agenda item 5. The statutory consultation to expand Ysgol Iolo Morgannwg. And I think is it Trevor or Lisa?
I'll present, Chair, if that's okay.
Hi, Lisa, and there's Trevor.
Trevor's
there we go.
welcome to join me. Hi. Hi.
Take it away.
Thanks. You'll be aware that Cabinet recently authorised the Directorate of Learning and Skills to undertake a consultation on the proposal to expand Ysgol Iolo Morgannwg in Cowbridge from a 210 place school to a 420 place school, with an increase in nursery provision to 96 part-time places from 66 places. This expansion would take the form of a new school building with an additional facility on site to support adult education in the area, as well as pupil Welsh language immersion services, and would be complete from September 2025. The new primary school building would be constructed on the Section 106 land within the land to the north and west of Darren Close housing development. Upon completion of the building, Ysgol Iolo Morgannwg would transfer to the new site. In order to contribute effectively to the Welsh Government's target of 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050, significant investment in provision is required within education to both generate and facilitate demand for Welsh language education. The reason for this proposal is therefore to create and accommodate additional demand for Welsh medium primary education as a result of recent and proposed housing developments, as well as working towards the Council's Welsh in Education Strategic Plan. A primary ambition of our WESP plan is to increase the number of Year 1 pupils taught through the medium of Welsh to 24% by 2031-32. There are also considerations in relation to the current accommodation for the school. The main school building is a Victorian building built in 1900, as well as dining blocks and outbuildings from the same period, and 3 demountable buildings. The school is on a confined sloping site, which doesn't allow for a substantially increase in the site to meet modern standards. The consultation commenced on the 27th of February for 6 weeks period and ends on the 11th of April. And it is as part of this consultation that this report is referred to Scrutiny Committee for consideration. Consultation feedback to date has been very positive, and all responses received throughout the consultation period will be considered by Cabinet. Following consideration of the responses, Cabinet will then need to make a determination regarding how the next steps in relation to the proposal will proceed. That's a brief summary of the report, Chair, but with your permission, either myself or Trevor would be pleased to take any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Lisa. Trevor?
I'll just add in really quickly. I mean, one of the things I think is really exciting about this proposal is it includes integration with our adult and community learning and the provision for immersion, which is something that we put in place a couple of years ago in Barry and which has been really, really successful. So taking that immersion provision to the Western Vale and building in that support for families to learn the language as part of the school community is new for us with that ACL provision, and it's something we're really excited about for that area. So it's a bit of a USP for this one. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Trevor.
thanks, Trevor.
Any questions from councillors on this? Councillor Marshalsea?
No, it just all sounds great.
Oh.
Thank you.
We'll take that. Councillor Hodges.
Thank you, Chairman. It's been a long time in the pipeline. It's all happening now, the consultation. As has been said by Lisa, this is our chance as the relevant committee to debate this and move this forward. I'm just happy to move that we put our support as a committee to the plan as outlined by Cabinet as part of the consultation.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Just want to see if anyone else has got any queries or questions for Trevor and Lisa.
The only other thing to mention, Chair, so we're in the consultation period at the moment. The closing date for the consultation is the 11th of April. And then the next stage is a report based on that will go to Cabinet on the 25th of May. And then depending on the outcome of that, the consultation process continues. So that's included in the paperwork as well. But in terms of next steps, it's just to encourage everybody and anybody to participate in the consultation. Links are on the website and to submit their feedback.
Sure.
Thank you.
And what's that process been? I mean, I guess parents have been sent the email. What's the process been for that? If you could talk us through.
As of today, yes. I mean, we invite all prescribed consultees, which obviously includes parents and pupils. And to date, we're a week in, just over a week in. We've had quite a number of responses, and all of them have been positive actually so far. But obviously, you know, we still have some way to go. But the report, as Trevor mentioned, will ensure that Cabinet consider all responses received.
Thank you. And I just wanted to ask about the specific number. So 420 places. I mean, could you just elaborate on how that number was reached?
Yeah, well, it's important for us with our WESP and with our development of Welsh education. Firstly, that we're ambitious and we create demand wherever possible. But as an authority, we have a school investment strategy, and one of the things that we consider as part of that is efficient education, effective education, and sort of the numbers of an effect to effectively manage education classes of 30. So in a sense, we'd be going from a one class in each year group school to a 2 class in each year group school. And, you know, it's the most effective way and efficient way of providing education, as well as ensuring that we can create sufficient demand. It will be a challenge to create, you know, to attract pupils. And there's as you'll be aware, there's a new English medium school being built in the area as well. You know, but as part of our Westman, as part of our work with, you know, across the education service, we'll be looking to promote that to ensure we can fill places as best we can.
Thank you. Councillor Hennessy.
Yeah, after Lisa's response, I'm happy to support this motion. I think it's a good idea. Sorry, I'm having internet problems, so I'm having to do this off my phone at the moment.
That's okay. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Good. Thanks, Councillor Hennessy. And just one thing I wanted to ask. Bont Vine school, will that have any benefit from the grounds or the old school buildings of Yola Morganwg or any of the grounds? Will it take over any of that, or what's the plan?
Well, not as part of this consultation, but obviously we have our capital programme, which we'll be looking to develop. What we've recently done is undertaken condition surveys of all of our schools, and we're looking to undertake suitability surveys of all of our schools in the summer term, and that feeds into the development of our capital programme and identifies our priorities. And obviously, a Bont Vine will be part of that, but there are no plans for a new school building for a Bont Vine.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. Unless there are any other questions. No. Again, it was explained so well. I think it's answered everyone's questions. So there we go. I'm happy to note the recommendations.
Happy to note, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you, William.
Sorry, Chairman. Surely we
Nick.
do more than notes. We actually support this as part of the consultation.
Yeah, we like a seconder, Nick.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thanks, William. Any objection to that, anyone? No. Thank you, Trevor and Lisa, for that. Cheers. Agenda item 6. So it's the annual equality monitoring report, and it's Tom Bowring.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. Good evening, and good evening, committee. Thanks very much for taking this reference this evening. This is from Cabinet of the 16th of February of the annual equality monitoring report for the year 2021-22. It's being referred to your committee, Chair, for consideration, with any comments being referred back to Cabinet for their consideration and inclusion then in the final version of the annual equality monitoring report. As committee will be aware, the Equality Act 2010 includes a public sector equality duty, which is called the general duty, and there are also some specific duties for Wales, and the specific duties that are relevant here are that we need to publish an annual report for the year prior by the 31st of March each year. So this is the report that we're bringing to yourselves, Chair, and in order to comply with those duties, the report is structured to provide some background information about the purposes of the report. It talks about how we identify and collect relevant information, how we've used that information, and then based on that, a statement of effectiveness of our arrangements for identifying and collecting the information and progress towards fulfilling the Council's existing equality objectives. We then look at the effectiveness of the steps that as a council we've taken to fulfill each of those equality objectives, and then provide some specific information that's required by statute. So, for example, around employment information and information around training and pay. The plan, the strategic equality plan that runs from 2020 to 24 is aligned with our corporate plan. It therefore involves services from right across the organisation, and as such, the annual equality monitoring report is a very wide-ranging report drawing on information from all of our council services. There are 10 equality objectives in the current plan, and what the report does is provide some of the updates against fulfilling those objectives. So around work to improve how we involve, engage and communicate with protected groups, the report talks about some of the consultation exercises that have been underway, the work of the Equalities Consultative Forum, and how complaints data, the diversity networks that we have, and some specific social services examples with service users to illustrate how we've gone about involving, engaging and communicating with people from protected characteristics. There's then some information around the gender pay gap, which we're required to monitor. We also monitor the ethnicity pay gap on a quarterly basis, and the report sets out the direction of travel for each of those. The third of our equality objectives is around improving employment opportunities in the council for people from protected groups, particularly disabled and young people. The idea of that is to reflect more closely the diversity of the local population by March 2024. So the report gives you some information around different approaches to advertising that we've been taking over the last year or so, using different imagery and descriptions. And there are some specific examples around work in social services where we've ring-fenced certain apprenticeship roles to groups involving children looked after and those leaving care. It also makes some references to the support of Learn Welsh in the Vale work in terms of Welsh language support. The fourth of the equality objectives around continuing work on developing the council as a more inclusive work environment. You've got information this evening around the staff networks. That's concentrating on LGBT and also on minority, ethnic and disability. So there's some information in there on those, including the council's results in terms of the Stonewall Workforce Equality Index, which improved the position during the year in that index. The fifth of the objectives is around supporting and developing elected members. The year that this report refers to is the year where we were doing the preliminary work around the member induction programme, which has been delivered in the last year, and that included some mandatory equalities training for all elected members. But during the year of this report, we provided a series of race awareness training to elected members to support and develop them. The sixth of the objectives is around implementing plans to address attainment gaps for children and young people to provide support to overcome barriers to them reaching their potential. And there's a wealth of information in the report this year around statutory consultations on admissions, those that accompanied with equality impact assessments, some information around the school building programme, support for young people on mental health issues, attendance and free school meals eligibility, as well as bullying information and St Cyri's achieving School of Sanctuary status. The seventh of the objectives is around addressing hate crimes, violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence. There's a series of updates in the report, Chair, around the violence against women, domestic violence and sexual violence 5-year regional strategy. And that includes some work around the domestic abuse referral coordinators work, as well as our important work with Atala Fro and other specialist agencies, including the Safer Vale Partnerships work within that remit as well. The eighth of the objectives is around supporting people with housing, with their housing needs of people with protected characteristics. And the report refers to some work that has been done by colleagues in the housing service around reviewing various processes, for example, around the Homes for You application process, as well as providing you with some information around disabled facilities grants and how the Council Tax and Housing Benefits team are monitoring information in order to identify any particular trends and also to develop improvements in their processes. The penultimate of the objectives is around considering issues with transport accessibility, particularly for disabled people and older people. And the report this year draws on some findings of a survey that was completed by the 50+ Forum. That highlighted that transport was the second most important topic to respondents after health. It also identifies some work around the provision of the Green Link service in the rural Vale, tackling access and social isolation issues, as well as reflecting on the progress made on the Public Services Board staff healthy travel charter, so use of active and public transport for getting staff to and from work. And then finally, Chair, the 10th of the objectives is around developing and implementing plans to promote the natural and built environment with a particular emphasis on accessibility. And the report provides you with some information around how we've continued to support community groups through the Strong Communities Grant Fund, as well as improvements to certain areas across the Vale, including Bellevue Pavilion. The report also then provides you with a series of appendices that show the contribution of the wider work of the council to this particular agenda. There's an awful lot of information in there, but that hopefully gives you a bit of a summary, and obviously be very happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Tom. So any questions from councillors for Tom about the report? Councillor Good, John.
Thank you ever so much, Tom. The whole report gives a real holistic feel. It's really, really good to hear, and it's very interesting reading. There's a lot of it, but it's lovely to see so much support out there. On item 6, on the strategic equality, objective 3, sorry. Can this include mental health and well-being on it too?
Absolutely. Whilst and we would certainly be able to reflect on that one. So that's the objective around employment opportunities for protected groups, particularly disabled and young people. I'm very happy to take that feedback to Cabinet, and we can certainly look to reflect how we're doing some of that work, specifically around supporting colleagues with neurodiverse needs. So yeah, thank you very much indeed, Councillor.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Marshalsea.
Hi, I'm just looking at some of the things that have been developed to help and support with equality in general. I'm looking at anti-racism training. Now, this was something I mentioned quite a while back now, and I'm just wondering, from what I've read on there, there's very limited information. It's sort of basically doing research into how you can support schools and people within the council with anti-racism training. Now, I personally believe this is really needed within the Vale, and think there is quite a lot of systemic racism around. And I'm just interested in how this can be moved forward sort of quicker, really, just because really, I can see that there's sort of research being done into it, but we need it on the grounds. We need it in schools now. What's the plan moving forward?
Thank you, Councillor Marshalsea. And during the 2022-23 year, so the current year, there has been quite a significant amount of progress made based on that consideration in the past year. The council strategic leadership team in the last couple of months has made access to some anti-racism training. My management team had the same training this week as well, and we've also been trialling that within a couple of the schools as well, using a new provider. I can see Trevor's got his hand up and he might want to come in more on the school side, but certainly that is picking up at pace.
Muted, Trevor.
Talking to myself as usual. I was just going to say it's a timely question. We had some correspondence that went out to all of our primary schools today about some anti-racist training in April, building on some of the work we did with them last year. So this is face-to-face training. This time around, it's being hosted at Whitmore for all of our primary school colleagues. They've also been sent some template information to help integrate into their strategic equality plans locally at a school-based level. So that work is being done on the ground with schools quite actively at the moment, because you're quite right, it is a very important topic that needs a lot of attention at the moment.
Thank you. I think obviously what you're doing, it wasn't necessarily on there then, because I thought it was very much, being planned for rather than done. So that sounds great. Thank you so much.
I think that highlights the issue, Councillor Marshalsea, of the report being very late in this financial year to referring to the previous one. And what I've asked colleagues to do is see if we could expedite this so that we can bring you an annual report before your summer recess as a committee, referring to the prior year. It just might help you to be able to keep us on our toes a little bit more.
Great, thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you, Naomi. Anyone else? I have one or two questions, Tom. So just looking through, there's obviously a lot of staff having to fill out forms with religion and marriage status and things of that nature. Obviously, there's quite a number of people who haven't filled in. So I was just wondering the validity of the information you've got in terms of the number of people who haven't filled that data in, and what are your plans to encourage more people to fill that in, and if you think that it's a problem.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely, the information comes from a range of different sources. So from application as well as then regular updates. We're shortly going to be migrating to a different version of our HR system, and that will give us the opportunity to in effect do a little bit more of a kind of cleanse of information and to be able to go back out and canvass for some of that information, and we would always share that information or share that request for that information with staff, explaining exactly the purposes that we're going to be using it for. So it's something that we would encourage people to do in an anonymous way, but it does certainly help us in terms of monitoring our information. So yeah, it's an ongoing piece of work for us to consider.
Thanks, Tom. And then final thing for me in Strategic Equality Objective 4, it talks about the Stonewall Workplace Equalities Index ranking improving. So I was just wondering what sort of things the council had done to improve the ranking and what guidance from Stonewall had been taken in order to achieve that.
Thank you, Chair. So in this particular year, the index mechanism changed. So each year we're required to, if we want to participate, we're required to provide a range of different information around the kind of support that we provide to all colleagues and specifically to LGBTQ plus colleagues. So you'll have seen improvements in areas of the networks activities around supporting Pride, but also in terms of supporting allyship within the council. So there's a range of different measures that are used as part of the index, and that then is something that Stonewall themselves compile in order to produce the index. So I'm not entirely au fait with what they do, because obviously that's how they produce the index themselves. But what it does then provide us with is an action plan for where there are certain areas that we can improve in the future, and some of that relates to support for the community outside of the council as well, and opportunities for training and development, including more role models within the organisation. So they're things that the Equalities team and the GLAM network are working on currently.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I don't think there are any other questions, so thank you for your time and for the explanation. And obviously, I think what you said about changing the date of the report next year is something that'd be really good and useful.
Right, so thank you.
Thank you for that. So I move that we note the recommendations here. If I could have a seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Tom. So moving on to agenda item 7, capital monitoring. Victoria, take it away.
Thanks, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So yeah, the report gives an update on the progress of the capital programme between the 1st of April 2022 and the 31st of January 2023. So in terms of the whole capital programme, at the time of writing, the approved programme totalled 88.2 million. And if all the requests within the report to amend the capital programme are approved, the revised forecast outturn is projected to be 79.6 million. And spend to the end of January was 42.7 million. So in terms of learning and skills, for the directorate at the time of writing, the approved programme totalled 31 million.
And if all the requests are approved within the report, the revised forecast out-in is projected to be 30.6 million. Spend at the end of January was 18.5 million. Now that might seem quite low, but there's still significant spend going to be on Band-B schemes in February and March. And there was also some late grants that came through in terms of ALN and the Community Focused Schools grant, and works are currently being carried out on those schemes. Capital schemes are still facing continued challenges such as long lead times on the delivery of materials and also significant cost increases. This is due to the current economic climate, and these are resulting in delays to some of the capital programme. So we're monitoring schemes closely throughout the year to identify overspends and slippages. And as part of this report, £8 million has been requested in total to slip, of which 276k relates to the Learning and Skills Directorate. So further slippage will be reported as part of the capital out-in report. So Appendix 1 details the financial progress by scheme, and Appendix 2 is summarised over the directorates and sets out the approved budget as at the final proposals report that was approved in February 22. And then this details movements in year, including slippages and additions to demonstrate the journey of the revised forecast out-in for 22-23. The report also details recent delegated authority requests that have been approved, and it notes the use of emergency powers in Appendix 1. So there are 12 requests within the body of the report that are within the remit of this scrutiny committee, and these are a mixture of variants between schemes and also some small carry forwards to align budgets with current work programmes. So that summarises the capital report, and I'm happy to take any questions on that report.
Thank you, Victoria. So councillors, any questions on that? You mentioned thumbs up. You mentioned, Victoria, the grants. So I just wonder if you could expand on what those grants were.
Yeah, so the ALN grant is for additional learning needs, and that can be used to enhance learning environments or to purchase equipment. So the grants came in quite late in the financial year, and obviously they take some planning, but works have been underway in February and March. I do have a list of schemes, and I can send those out to you. I haven't got it to hand now, but you know, I can get you those if you're interested in specifics. And the Community Focused Schools grant is to help schools be more open to the community, basically. So I think there's been some like security works going on, but again, I do have a list of those schemes which I can circulate to you.
Brilliant. Yeah, an email with those would be fine. I appreciate it's a lot to remember, but yeah, that'd be brilliant. Thank you, Victoria.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't think there's any other questions by the looks of it. So again, I'll just move that we note the recommendations there. If I could have a seconder for that.
I'll have a second. Wendy Gilligan.
Thank you, Wendy. Thanks, Victoria, for that. Moving on to agenda item 8, revenue monitoring.
Yeah, me again. So yeah, the revenue position for 22-23 is going to continue to be challenging for the council operationally and financially due to the ongoing implications of the cost of living crisis and the current inflationary pressures. So the emerging pressures during this financial year relate to the additional pay award settlement and general inflation, particularly in areas such as school transport, the cost of living and staffing pressures. So currently, over the whole council, there is a balanced overall position after a projected drawdown of £12.2 million from reserves. So current projections are indicating that the Learning and Skills Directorate will out-in with an adverse variance of 465k. And this is after transferring 7 million in from reserves. So the variance is in relation to school transport, but if it's not been able to be mitigated by the end of the financial year, it will be funded by an underspend in the revenue policy budget. So it's anticipated that schools will out-in in line with the revenue budget, as any variances will either be met or carry forward through school reserves. The council has recently provided an additional budget of 1.5 million to schools in 22-23 to partly meet the pay pressure, and this funds 57% of the pressure of the additional pay award in 22-23. So schools are also anticipating a rise in energy costs for the current financial year and based on the rise in standing charges. The amount that schools will need to draw down from reserves is difficult to predict. However, it's currently anticipated to be in the region of £6 million. Additional costs have also been reported by the service in respect of recoupment income, external placements and resource bases. So as part of the final revenue budget proposals for 22-23, an efficiency target of 500k was set for the council. No efficiency target was set for schools, and the 68k that was set for learning and skills has been found. The use of reserves has reduced slightly in year, and this is mainly due to the slippage that's taken place on the capital programme. And the reserve analysis that you can see in the report reflects the reallocation of reserves that has taken place as part of the preparation for the 23-24 revenue budget. In terms of Treasury management, the Council is continuing to utilise reserves over external borrowing on a temporary basis, given the high interest rates at the moment for borrowing. There is additional underspend in year on the back of investment income, which is being used to offset overspends in year within the revenue budget. So that summarises the revenue report, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you again for that, Victoria. Councillors, any questions for Victoria? It's all the numbers, Victoria. It's a lot to take in.
No problem.
I just want to ask about sort of projections for, I mean, obviously you talk about school transport and there's mention of ALN in here. What sort of projections are the council working on over the sort of coming months and years with regard to demographic changes, more children with ALN and things like that, and how that's going to impact revenue and spending and things of that nature?
Yeah, so obviously the school transport costs are increasing due to fuel and I think drivers and more routes being needed. But in terms of projections for next year, you know, I know my colleague Gemma's been working with the education service to try and get forward projections of what that will be. I don't know if Trevor's got his hand up. He may be able to help me out a little bit.
Yeah, it was just to say, and I'm sure Dave will say the same thing. We are seeing some trends in terms of levels of need for additional learning needs, and the complexity that's coming along with that is growing. We've seen increases in those pupils who meet the threshold for eligibility for free school meals. At last count, over the course of COVID, from where we were, that was about a 67% increase. So those numbers are rising. And there's additional needs and complexities that go with that. And then when we, you know, I won't lie, the budget situation is going to be challenging for schools going forward. That's not going to go away anytime soon, and we're going to have to work very closely with schools to support them to meet those challenges. But in essence, it's going to be tough, yeah.
And David?
Yes, thanks. Just to echo what Trevor's saying, really, that there are clear trends of increase in children and young people with social, emotional, mental health difficulties. They're also presenting at a much younger age. Obviously we're trying to build capacity within mainstream schools to meet need, but that is challenging for schools, which then leads on to the necessity to develop more specialist placements, either that being resource bases or actually places in special school, a Sculaderi, for example. So, you know, the direction is one of increased need and therefore increased cost to meet that need, which, yeah, as Trevor said, is really challenging going forward. So yeah, lots of challenges ahead.
Okay, thank you for that, everyone. I don't think there are any other questions from councillors. No. Okay, thanks, David, Trevor, Victoria, for that. Insightful as always.
Yeah.
I'll just have a second. I'll move the recommendations, and if anyone would like to second those.
I can second. Oh, sorry, Emma.
Either.
two is better than one. Lovely. Thank you both for that. So we'll move on to agenda item 9 now. It's the summary of Estin inspection outcomes for the autumn term. Okay. Back to Caris.
Yeah. Diolch yn fawr, Chair. There's two parts to this agenda item. There's a report, obviously, on the findings of the inspection outcomes for autumn 2022. But we're also joined by Innes Robinson, the head of school for Whitmore High, who will be giving us a presentation on the case studies of interesting or innovative practice that Estin identified in the school. So I'll go through the report to begin with, and then I'll hand over to Innes. So in terms of obviously the context, in terms of Estin, we're very much aware, because this is something we've been looking at on a termly basis over the last 2 terms. Inspections were reintroduced back in March 2022, following the suspension in March 2020 due to COVID. Back in the spring term, initially schools were asked to put themselves forward for the inspection, but since the summer term and autumn term, Estin have identified schools to be inspected. So for the autumn term 2022, 5 schools were inspected in the Vale, 4 of them primary schools and 1 secondary school. So you've got St Helens Roman Catholic, Pendoilan Church in Wales Primary, Ysgol Penygarth, South Point Primary and Pencoetra High. So in Appendix 1, you've got an overview of the inspection findings and the recommendations for each school. And then in terms of Appendix 2, you've got an overview then that goes back to when inspections were reintroduced back in March 2022 in terms of the schools and non-settings that were have been inspected in the Vale. In terms of follow-up work, in terms of 2 of the schools that were inspected in autumn 2022, 2 schools were placed in a statutory follow-up category. Ysgol Penygarth and Pencoetra High were both placed in special measures. As those 2 schools were placed in special measures, there's requirements on the school and the local authority to respond. In terms of the school now, both schools have to draft a post-inspection action plan, and that's to be completed within 20 days of the inspection being published. And the action plan should identify how the school is going to address the Estin recommendations and to make progress in relation to those Estin recommendations as soon as possible. And the school are being supported by the local authority and Central South Consortium in relation to this work. The second document where work is ongoing is in relation to the local authority. Local authorities are asked to prepare a written statement of action, and the statement of action outlines all the external support that goes into those 2 schools to support them to make the necessary progress to meet those recommendations. And just to give you an update where we are in relation to both schools, in terms of Penygarth, the post-inspection action plan and the statement of action have been forwarded to Estin. In terms of Pencoetra, the post-inspection action plan, the 20 days since the publication of the report is tomorrow. So the post-inspection action plan will be sent in tomorrow, and the statement of action by the local authority will be sent in by a week tomorrow. In terms of monitoring progress of those schools, Estin will monitor on a termly basis, but the local authority and Central South Consortium are also monitoring on a half-termly basis. This is something that's already in place, and it involves representatives from the schools, local authority and Central South Consortium. And what we are going to be doing is to give further consideration how we report to Scrutiny on the progress of these two schools. In terms of interesting or innovative practice, Estyn also identify and invite schools to write case studies where they come across interesting or innovative practice. In the autumn term, one school was invited to write a case study, and that's Pendoilan Church in Wales Primary, who were invited to write a case study on their work in developing the curriculum. For those of you who have been members of Scrutiny for a period of time, they will be familiar with that work, as Paula Vaughan, the head teacher, did a presentation to us a few terms ago. In the autumn term as well, the case studies from the spring term inspections were also published. So there was a case study from Stanwell, and there was 2 case studies published from Whitmore High. And you have the links to those inspection reports and those case studies as part of Appendix 3 in terms of your report. I'm going to hand over now to Ynys for the presentation, and then we'll take any questions that come from the paper and the presentation. Diolch yn fawr, Ynys.
Brilliant. Cheers, guys. Can I share in a minute? Is that possible? If I press share, will it work?
It should be possible.
I hope it works, Ynys.
I'm going to go with it and hope for the best. Give me 1 second. There we are. If you want that. How's that? Can people see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Oh, perfect. Okay. I always hate not being able to see people. It feels odd, but here we are. So, firstly, thank you for letting me speak tonight. It's always nice talking about Whitmore. If you haven't seen our Estyn report, I'll be amazed, because I think I've shared it with every person in the world. So if you haven't seen it, that's a shame. But these are 2 case studies that Estyn gave us. And what we were delighted about with these case studies were, they were on the things that I think really matter in schools. So it's the first time, I think, in the Vale, I think that's fair to say, Paula, there's been a teaching and learning case study, which is the one we really wanted. And the second one was all about creating a culture for learning, which is making sure attitudes to learning are right in schools. Because there's no point having great teaching if the pupils aren't ready to hear from it. So what this presentation is going to do, is going to talk about how we've kind of gone down the route of improving teaching in the school and behaviour and professional development. And those are the 3 things that Estyn really noticed. If you want to read the report, by all means do. I'll give the links at the end. So this is our belief at Whitmore, that there are 3 key truths with teaching. Firstly, all teachers want to be good. And I know this because I don't think I've ever met a teacher who doesn't want to do really well. But sometimes I think it gets so complicated that they don't know how to be good. So my wife is a brilliant primary school teacher, and she used to come back from an observation saying, there's 40 things I need to do, and I don't know which one I'm meant to do. So I think we need to simplify things for teachers, because then they can understand what they need to do. And like I've said there, great teaching does not have to be complicated. It's about relationships and about doing the same thing every single time. That's what we like. And this is the 3rd key truth that's quite recent, is the teachers you've got are the teachers you've got. And what I mean by that is, there's not some great teacher tree out there where there's these new upcoming teachers who can come to your school and make it better. What you've actually got to do is develop the ones you've got. And because what I've noticed is, as long as you make it simple for teachers, the vast majority can get better. So our teaching model is, we believe in direct teaching, which is where the teacher's in control of the learning intentions, and they make it really clear what the expectations are through direct instruction. And what we mean by that is something we call I do, we do, you do, which is the teacher models it, they question to see if the pupils understand it, and then because the pupils actually understand what they're doing and they've got the knowledge required to do it, they are then much more capable during the independent task. And this has worked because it's research backed. So I did my MBA on this, and I'll talk about it later, we've got 13 members of staff doing their masters at the minute, and we're all focusing on this type of teaching. Teachers now understand how to be successful, and it's easy to improve elements of a lesson because you compartmentalize them. So rather than me just saying it, this is really important. We always check constantly, are the teachers doing what we think? And when I say checking, we're really positive with it, but I reckon I'm probably in every teacher's class 3 or 4 times a week easily, because at least they know that we're not watching them, but we're making sure that we're seeing that it's actually happening. So this is what Eston said. They believe that pupils are making rapid and secure progress. Now they say most, and that's a good Eston word because it means about 80%, but they were really positive about this, that the teachers in our school do direct teaching, and the consistency means there's no variance in teaching, which happens a lot in schools. I'm really proud of this. Nearly all teachers know their pupils really well, and they adapt their teaching to the context of each class. Really strong subject knowledge and enthusiasm, that's always important. And our questioning is good. So what we basically found out was by having this structure, Eston weren't seeing the variance they normally see in schools. So that was the teaching. And then what we thought is if you get the teaching right in schools, that's the moment when you start going on to attitudes to learning. Because if you think about attitudes to learning first, sometimes a lot of the things that go wrong with pupils in school invariably start off with the lesson and the quality of the lesson. So we believe you can't put a behaviour system in until the teachers are teaching consistently good lessons. So at Whitmore, we spent 2 years making sure our teaching and learning model was in place. And at that moment, we gave them a new behaviour system that is completely aligned to our teaching system. The behaviour system needs to align to our key values. We've got 4 key values, and every time you give a negative or a positive in our school, you align it to one of our key values. And if you ever meet any of my senior leaders, I know if you've been on visits to the school, we believe in being painfully, relentlessly positive with pupils at all times, because that is the way to be with pupils. And you'll see our senior leaders model that, and therefore the teachers do the same. And it's a centralized system based on core values. For example, if a pupil was to, during the modeling section, shout out, they would get a negative point for not showing respect. And that happens in every single lesson with every member of staff saying the same language. And that consistency is much better for pupils because they now know where they are. If during the questioning section you don't give an answer, then you're not showing resilience. And that will also go to a negative. And if during the independent section you're not on task, then you might not be working hard, you might not be showing resilience. And obviously the other side of it is we can be very positive when people do the right thing. And this is why it works. It's consistent. So every teacher uses the same language. Pupils are not having to go from one lesson to the other, not knowing what the difference is. It's really clear for pupils, and teachers always feel supported because instead of it just being SLT, the senior leadership team, and then the teachers on their own, all teachers are working together. And what we found is since COVID, there's more families who are living maybe a chaotic life at home. And it's our job in school to give them that structure so they know where they are every day when they're in school. So in terms of behaviour, this is what Eston said.
Dennis, sorry to cut across you. I don't know if you were moving on the slides, but we're still on the first slide.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
I didn't want to interrupt you in full flow. You were going so well, but
well, don't worry, never worry.
all right.
Well, what I'll do is I'll stop sharing.
That's great now. It came out.
Well,
yeah.
I've just stopped sharing.
That's all right.
Wrong there? I'll come back. Can you see me? Do you want me to share again?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Sorry, guys. To be honest, it's not the end of the world. As long as you understood what I was saying, it's good.
Yeah.
I'll get you.
I was reluctant to interrupt the flow, as I said, but you know.
Oh, I never mind. Don't worry. It's such a monologue speaking to a screen where no one can see anyway. So I welcome the. Okay, can you see that now?
Yeah.
Right, and I'll stick and I'll make sure. Can you see me switching slides?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, the dream's on.
I
Okay,
thought
great.
it was just me. Thank you, Reese.
Oh, well done. No worries, guys. Okay, so this is what Eston is saying about us, and the second line is in a time where if you look on teaching, you say what is the problems in school right now? What are people having problems with? It's low-level disruption, and teachers all they want is to be able to teach their lessons that they love doing. And what it says on the second one is that in the majority of lessons, behaviour is exemplary, and I'm incredibly proud of that because this is still, despite what you might now think, it's still a quite challenging demographic in the school. But we've got to make sure we've got really high expectations for pupils. And I like the last bit there is they work independently of the teacher and take responsibility for their learning. That's what the new curriculum is all about. But you can't work independently unless you know what you're doing. And that's the process that we go for at Whitmore. So just to make sure, if I change slide there, did that change?
Yeah.
Perfect. So the third final bit is school as a learning organisation. So we believe, and this was part of our second case study, we believe that there's three key truths again. That the best motivator is self-actualization. And what I mean by this is, there's all the things in the news with teachers about pay. And whilst I think we get paid well, that is obviously an issue right now in terms of motivation. So what's the best thing we can do as a school is make sure teachers reach their full potential. And any professional development we do has to have credibility, and everything in the new curriculum focus on all change being evidence-based. So what we've done at Whitmore High is 13 members of staff are completing their Masters with Cardiff Met right now. I'm currently doing my doctorate with Cardiff Met about reducing the poverty gap. We're a lead school for ITT training with Cardiff Met, so every year we have 30 student teachers coming into the school to improve. 40 members of staff are teaching and learning coaches. Karis will know that 6 members of our staff are subject lead practitioners for Central South. And this is really good, is I think when you're doing well as a school, you have to make sure you share it. And the recent Estin annual review, the only school that was mentioned during teaching and learning was Whitmore, and we were mentioned often in the review. So since then, 16 schools have visited the school. And last week I was in Wrexham supporting a school in Wrexham. And why does this school as a learning organisation work? It works because we're giving staff valuable professional development. So the cost for masters and doctorates will be £67,000 a year. But because we've got our links with Cardiff Met and the Central South and Welsh Government, we are actually making money rather than spending it. So the masters are free, the doctorate is on a reduced amount, and for example, I'm getting paid, or I'm not getting paid, I wish I was. The school's getting straight back into professional development. So staff value being developed, and all the research we do is used back in the school. So this is what Estin said about our professional development. They said there's a vibrant culture of professional learning in the school, which that's a lovely thing to hear. Staff receive valuable opportunities to develop their professional knowledge. And the final bit is what's most important, because a lot of times schools will say things are happening, but what matters is it having an impact? And it's saying the professional learning we're having is having a strong impact on the quality and consistency of teaching. So the kind of final thing I'd say is we just did a recent staff survey that said 87% of staff feel good or better about being in school right now, which according to when they did that, because we used a national model for it, this was in the excellent section for schools, but it was far and above what it should be right now. And I think why are staff happy? Because they understand what they need to do. They're rewarded for doing well. They're seen when they do well. And they know that in this school, they're going to be developed to be the best they can be. So if you want to read more about the school, there's the 2 case studies up there. If you look at the Estin annual review, we're in there as well. And I honestly mean this. I love a visit. So if you ever want to come, please come. And that is me.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Sorry, Karis, go on.
That's okay. I was just going to say thank you very much, Ines, for that. And as Ines said, you've also got reference to the case studies as part of Appendix 3 in the report as well as the one for Pendoilan and Stanwell as well. But it's good to hear firsthand from the schools in terms of being willing to share their practice. So thank you, Ines, for your time. I'm not sure if there's any questions, Chair, that anyone would like to ask.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Ines. We won't be taking up your offer, and I hope you don't come to regret that when we all come flooding in.
Oh no, I love it. Honestly, it's the best thing. It's great.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I'll drop you an email at some point about that. Councillor Norman.
Thank you very much. That was a very good report, and congratulations. I was just wondering, could you give us an average age of your teaching staff and what the turnover in your staff rate is, please?
Oh, that's a very good question. So average age, what I would say is the staff we've got at Whitmore are almost complete the staff that was at Barry Boys, apart from the ones who have come in. And it is, I would say, and I couldn't give you the actual age, I would say it is almost all the staff are older than me, if that's anything. But what I basically, it is a real mix. It's a real mix because all you can do is when you appoint the best who's available when they're there, and that's what we do. And the only, in terms of budget, we talk about budget. Staff are expensive. A lot of our staff are on their top end of their scale. So we as a school are now sixth form entry. So if you imagine there's 180 pupils coming to Whitmore, I mean, there's not 180 because it's really popular at the minute. There's a lot of people who come in on appeal. That means every class has got about 32 pupils in. So what we do to solve that is we have mixed ability in the school, which means that that is tight because it is expensive. Our staffing is expensive. But I can't answer that question. There was a second question you asked that was I could answer. So
the staff turnover rate.
Staff turnover. It is tiny. So it is we've had one member of staff leave in the last year, and they went to become a train driver. Good for them. But what I can say, in our last Kirkland Rowell survey, which is the survey we use, 75% of staff said they were going to, they believe they're going to be in the school in 5 years' time. Because once you're doing a master's, that guarantees are there for 2 years. My doctorate means I'll be there for 5 years. And I think you've got to have things that make you want to stay there, and you want to feel like you're going to be developed. So, for example, all my SLT have come. My SLT only had 3 members in it, and now there's 7. All of them have been promoted internally. So there's that feeling that there's progression that can happen within a school. So I never know whether I answered the question or not, but there we are.
Yes, you have. Thank you very much. Thank you.
David, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I just thanks Ines for that. I'm sure Ines won't mind me mentioning either, because I know it's something that he is particularly involved with and very proud of, is the resource base within the school for young people with autism as well, which is extremely successful and an integral part of the school. So just wanted to let people know that there was also that very important base in the school as well.
Oh, good man, David. That is probably the thing I'm most proud of. So when you come around the school, you will feel that is a real part of the school. This sounds smug, so bear with me, but Eston said in the feedback they could have done 10 different case studies and they had to pick on a couple. What's going on, and if you ever meet someone called Maria Pross, who's in charge of the autism base, it's something pretty special.
Yeah, thank you, David and Ines. Councillor Marshalsea.
Hi, thank you, Ines. Fascinating. I will be emailing you to come for a visit because Whitmore's in my ward as well. So I'd love to come and see. I guess the question really is more to Caris, but very interesting that what your PhD is in Ines, because obviously now with Pencoitry and special measures, I'm very concerned about the Barry divide, between now Whitmore and Pencoitry. And my questions really are, what will you be doing as the consortium to support? Obviously, I listened to everything you said, but the staff changes, for example, that will be needed, and those sorts of things, just to make sure that that gap isn't widened across Barry.
Thank you, Councillor Marshalsea. We're working closely in terms of with the local authority and the consortium, and we're developing at the moment a post-inspection action plan and statement of action for the school. In terms of support for the school, it's actually quite wide-ranging at the moment. So we've got a sort of support in terms of staffing. So there are some secondments. We've got a new interim executive head in the school. We're funding CSC for the spring term, an assistant head with expertise in terms of ALN and well-being to work with the school, and that person will be moving across in terms of a full-time secondment from after Easter. There's a period of appointments ongoing at the moment, so 2 assistant heads have been appointed before half term, and they will be starting in the school after Easter. So in the first instance, it's getting the staffing structure in place and getting the people in place so that then we can move on and focus then in terms of structures in the school. So there is going to be ongoing support, and I'm emphasising ongoing support in terms of ALN in the school, and the local authorities are already working closely with the school in terms of ALN support. There's also ongoing support in terms of attendance from the local authority. There's regular clinics held in relation to, so to try and offer support and identify some of the issues and causes and trying to address those. And then there's other layers of support as well coming into the school in terms of, yes, the quality of teaching, but also focusing on pupils' literacy skills. In the first instance, it will be pupils' literacy and numeracy skills. Over time, that will develop in terms of pupils' independence skills and Welsh skills as well. But the main priority in the first instance will be in terms of pupils' literacy and numeracy. And then there's another recommendation, as you'll see, in terms of the Appendix 1, where there's a reference to gate security. Again, we're working closely with the schools, working closely with the local authority there, and plans have been proposed and being followed appropriately to strengthen the security and having a front gate at the school.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodges.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, can I say thank you, Innes, for the presentation. I both enjoy and learn from these case studies, and it gives me a sense of pride that our schools, on the whole, do excellent work. I appreciate talking about the whole wider issue of these school reports. I do appreciate its catch-up time almost by Estyn following the suspension we had with COVID. And also the style of the inspections have somewhat changed over the years as well. So it's hard to sort of like judge them year on year on year, but this is the regimen they carry it out now. So I understand that. We've got a couple of recommendations here, basically, that we note these reports. We're doing more than that. We're discussing them here. But I'm happy to make two more recommendations. And for those who have been on lifelong learning before, one won't surprise you, one which is that we actually send congratulatory letters to the schools who used to get excellence and things like that, but now it's no further follow-up required sort of thing, which is a far less friendlier and congratulatory term, to be honest, but there we go. The second is that we, as a scrutiny committee, reintroduce the panel system that we successfully ran from this committee previously. Not only were they useful in allowing councillors to question the senior leadership teams of schools in special measures, but also allowed them to speak to councillors, the schools themselves, in a manner perhaps to help us progress improvement. For those who weren't on before, we ran them for a whole term once, and it was a panel of 3 members of the committee, not only councillors, but it was open to the co-opted members as well, where we'd go in with officer support, pre-arranged, and speak basically to the senior leadership teams of schools. And sometimes little gems, little nuggets came out that perhaps hadn't been previously identified. In fact, sometimes it was they felt it easier perhaps to talk to us, and sometimes we could offer or report back information and potential solutions just to help the situation forward. I hope that's helpful. I certainly would like to move those as recommendations. I think we as a committee need to be a bit more aware on the ground now that COVID's over of what's happening in some of the schools. So I'd like to move those, Chair.
Thank you, Nick. I see Paula wanting to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was in relation to Councillor Hodges' second recommendation about the panels, and as you've pointed out, the Estyn regime, I think you referred to it, has changed over the years, and now with schools in special measures, particularly the secondary schools, we are required to put a multi-agency panel in place to monitor progress at the school, and Estin are part of that panel, as will be the cabinet member. And this morning I spoke to Councillor Thomas too about the chair of Scrutiny being represented on that panel, as well as the leader of the council. And so those monitoring meetings will take place every half term. They're going to be very rigorous. What I'd be concerned about is then to have another panel scrutinising the school and its leadership, because there's a tremendous amount of work to do naturally, and I think that would introduce more bureaucracy. Caris mentioned earlier that we are giving consideration to how we report the progress of the schools which are in a category to Scrutiny Committee, and in doing so we will consider whether we need to set up any separate panel, but I would advise against any panel that goes in to scrutinise the school, because I do think that would be onerous on top of the already rigorous monitoring that will be put in place soon.
Thank you, Paula.
So, Chair, can I come back on that?
Certainly.
Thank you. Yeah, I am. I appreciate that, Paula. Thank you for that. My concern is that with the leader, with the cabinet member, and perhaps Reese as chair, that literally is one member of this committee. I think it should be more than that. Whilst I appreciate reports coming into us and being read to us and having, screenshots flashed at us and things like that, I think we actually need to not only expand our knowledge as a committee to properly scrutinise where there's issues, but I think if it could be taken on that we actually expand those numbers so more members of this committee can get involved. That's basically what I'm asking. It seemed to work so well before. Thank you.
If I could just come in on that, I do appreciate what you're saying, Nick, and at the moment I'm in the process of trying to arrange committee meetings for us to go to a variety of schools. As someone who was elected in 2022, I'm obviously don't have your experience of the panels, but what I would ask is if we can give what Paula has suggested a go, and go down that path and see how that works out and see what we can do in terms of reporting back to the committee, and in addition to that have committee visits to other schools, and then maybe revisit your panel's point in future, assess the situation and see what we can do. So I don't know if you're amenable to that, but that would be my suggestion for the time being, and I'd appreciate it if you'd spoken about this with me before tonight. I'm always open to all councillors if they want to talk to me about things like that, and I'd appreciate that in future. Councillor Birch.
Thank you. I wanted to come back to Innes and his description of how he's treating his staff, and I think it's very, very encouraging to see that you have such a low turnover and your retention of staff is so high, because I know, as you've heard me say before, as a retired teacher, schools where there is a high turnover of staff usually indicate there's something really quite wrong there. And I think it's really good, the way that you're supporting your staff, because it is so difficult to be a teacher knowing that you will reprimand a child but you will not be backed up by senior management, because for whatever reason that is really, really disheartening, and it makes your own classroom control very difficult. Also, the kind of the academic and intellectual progress that you're encouraging them to make, because that makes them feel appreciated. And I think it's also good from a consistency point of view for children that they see the same staff around, because they're going to be there for 5 to 7 years, and it's it's encouraging for them to see that there are people who enjoy doing what they're doing and teaching them and remaining in the same place of work for years and years, rather than just hopping about all over the place. And I think children really appreciate that kind of consistency in the classroom. It's not quite as bad as getting to the point where you're teaching the children of the children that you used to teach, but which I've done. But I know I'd just like to compliment you on the presentation and on how you're treating your staff, and I think that that's a really good. It's a really good way forward for you and your staff and for the children concerned. Thank you.
Just to throw something on that, I think there's a lot of pressures ahead, and I think your job is to make it simple for staff and take away the external pressures. There are so many external pressures. So we've got our approach to the new curriculum that we've changed the language of to make sure it's the staff's, so it doesn't feel like it's been imposed on them. It's our thing, and I think but we don't mark. We only mark assessments. So in schools, when you don't mark books. So our books have got no marking in. And Essence said they can see the progress in Essence because every teacher uses the same teaching process of how they do live feedback. And when you take marking away from staff, what you'll never know about teachers is they are ridiculously hardworking. So when you take something off them, they replace it with things that matter. So we've got 32 clubs that happen every week because teachers are happy to do clubs because they're not sat at home marking. We've got staff who plan their lessons really, really well because they're not taking 2 bookloads of books home. That doesn't make a difference. And it's just making sure it's the things that matter you do in schools as opposed to laden them with things that don't.
Thanks, Rhiannon and Innes. Councillor Asbury.
Thank you. Actually, I was very interested in what Councillor Hodges said, and I too would like to go in and visit schools, if at all possible. And I think teachers might speak to us as friendly faces rather than being critics. So I'd like to second what Councillor Hodges proposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Paula?
I'd just like to clarify, really. I have no problem with members of the Scrutiny Committee visiting schools and talking to schools, but your remit as a Scrutiny Committee, really what you need to focus on are the priorities that we've set as a council. So I suppose my advice as a Scrutiny Committee would be to choose something specific to focus on with schools. So, it could be something like attendance, for instance, which you'll notice in one of the later presentations is an area we need to improve on in schools. So all I would say is to have something that's quite is themed in some way if you're going to do a piece of work with schools. Outside that, as Innes has said, you're welcome to just visit the school generally as individual members as well of the Scrutiny Committee. So I just wanted to clarify that I'm not saying that members can't visit schools.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. Rhiannon, I don't know if that's a legacy hand or if you want to come back in, or legacy. Okay. Innes, I was just interested about the teachers doing qualifications, masters. Obviously, you're very highly qualified already. I was just wondering how you were looking to expand that, and if that's something you were looking for a majority of your staff to end up doing.
I think it will only go that way. So this year another 10 did it, and it's one of those things where you think, oh, a masters is really challenging. However, as long as it's got value within the school, I've got someone called Amy Waters-Bresner, she works for the Central South. She's incredible, but she makes sure the dissertation that people do is linked to one of the things they do already in school. So it's constantly evaluating what we do. Because the only downside of the way that we teach, which is really consistent, is there could be an argument of how do you push on the best teachers. So you have to open up the idea that you can do these extra things, and I think it's got to be modelled from the top. So I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. I still do see them. It's quite unusual to be here this late, and I think it's saying that you can do these extra things and develop yourself without it being an awful work-life balance. So the basic premise is we want to make sure as many teachers as they can get the opportunity to do it. And we made no blocks on it. So another 2 staff are going to do their doctorates coming through now, and it will just keep on building and building and building. In fact, there's 2 other ones that I like. There's our IT manager at the minute is doing his degree, so he can then become higher up in IT, which, you know, it's even our support staff are getting those moments. And the TAs within the school with Maria Prosser, they are getting a bespoke program. So the learning support teachers are getting a proper program of development, which in lots of schools they forget to do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ines. And I just had a final question for Caris and Paula about the 2 schools in special measures. I mean, obviously you've got sort of shared interest in what you're doing, but how are you ensuring that you're not duplicating work, if that makes sense? Like, what are the sort of areas that each organisation is handling with regards to the 2 schools?
I don't know, Paul, if you want me to start on this question. I think what's key to begin with is the statement of action that's been developed. And in terms of the statement of action, that clarifies all the external support that's going into the school, and key people have been identified to undertake key tasks and, you know, sort of time scales and expected outcomes in relation to activities. And that's been developed with all staff, you know, sort of in terms of local authority and Central South. And what we will be doing is to ensure that we review and monitor that statement of action, and to continue to update everybody where we are, and if anything needs to be refined, to make sure that communication is key. But we also have regular discussions about, you know, sort of schools causing concern. We've had a meeting this afternoon where it's been on the agenda. You know, sort of, so there's regular meetings that are being held, yes, in local authority, but also in Central South Consortium. And we've also got termly meetings, at least termly meetings, where people from CSE meet with local authority staff to discuss schools as well. So it's, you know, making sure communication channels are clear and making effective use of the statement of action with key roles and responsibilities identified.
Yeah, I think we're in contact on a daily basis, really, and more than once a day as well, Caris, aren't we? So I think that there is clarity over exactly what we're doing, what actions we're taking, propose to take, and who's responsible for undertaking those actions. And we monitor those, as Caris said, very closely and update frequently on what's been achieved and further work to be carried out. So I'm confident that we're not going to have duplication of effort.
Okay, thank you, Paula. I'm conscious, Ines, you've stayed late, and we really appreciate that. And I'm sure the kids want to see you before they go to bed. So
we're in luck; they've already gone to bed, so I'm okay.
Okay.
It's honestly, this is a real treat for me, so thank you. To know how to take them to bed.
No, thank you for coming. Really appreciate it, and you'll be flooded with requests for visits. So I hopefully we can arrange a committee visit to come and see you and on the good work you're doing. So I don't want to keep you any longer, but thank you for coming in.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Good night. Great. So there were 2 from Councillor Hodges. It was writing letters to schools. Anne, did you second both of those?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to the first one about writing letters? No. The second one, so just to clarify, Nick, is to set up a special panel to go into underperforming schools.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members of this scrutiny committee, both elected members and co-opted members, because it was open last term to them both, reintroduced the panel system to go into with officer support to talk to senior leadership teams of of schools that have in special measures. But at the moment, it's these 2 specific schools that I'm asking for. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. I've just got to say, I think that there's already processes in place for dealing with these things, but I'm against that at this particular moment in time. So if Liz would be able to take us to a vote.
Yes, Chair, that's no problem at all. If I take elected members in alphabetical order, so bear with me one moment. So, Councillor Asprey, are you for or against?
For, please. For.
Thank you. Councillor Gilligan, for or against?
Against.
Councillor Goodjohn.
Against.
Councillor Hodges, you're for?
Yes, 4.
Councillor Lynch-Wilson? Councillor Lynch-Wilson? Are you there, Councillor? Councillor Lynch-Wilson, you seem to perhaps be on mute from my side. If we go on ahead then to Councillor Marshalsea, and I'll go back to Councillor Lynch-Wilson.
Against.
Councillor Norman?
Against.
Councillor Penn has already left. So if I can take your vote, please, Chair. You're against. Have you already cast your vote?
Against, Liz.
As against, thank you. Councillor Lynch-Wilson, can you hear us? Okay. Councillor Gilligan?
I've already set my vote as against.
My apologies. Sorry about that. Okay.
That's okay, no problem.
Okay. Let's just see if I've missed anybody. I'm not quite sure what situation we should do with Councillor Lynch-Wilson. I'm not aware that she's left the meeting. Amy, could I take your advice on how we should try to contact Councillor Lynch-Wilson at all for her vote? Okay. Thank you, Amy, for that. So if I go to our co-opted members then next to take their vote while we hopefully try to reach Councillor Lynch-Wilson. If we could go first over to co-opted member Martin Price.
Against.
Thank you. And we also have co-opted member Barraclough, Lucy Barraclough on the line.
Yes, I vote against.
Okay. I can't see anything in the chat at the moment. I'm just going to double check that. No, we don't have any messages in the chat. So unfortunately, it seems like we may need to have Councillor Lynch-Wilson's vote recorded as not being present, so we're unable to vote on that one, unfortunately. But unless I've missed anybody, please do let me know Ah,
think
there
Rebecca.
we go.
Rebecca, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you ever so much for pointing that out. Rebecca Morteo, can I take your vote for or against, please?
Against.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Okay. So if there's no further votes that I need to take, then let me just quickly check. I make that 8 against and 2 for. Could anyone check that for me? Chair or Amy?
Yeah, Councillor Hodges agrees.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for carrying that out, Liz. And could I also get a seconders for the other recommendations? I don't think we covered those.
Sorry, what are we talking about now? Haven't I seconded it already?
That was for Nick's to note.
Yes, I'll second that.
Brilliant. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. So moving on to agenda item 11, service level activities and performance targets to deliver the annual delivery plan. Paula.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and make this quick. I have the graveyard shift. The report in front of you presents our planned service activities, which are outlined in our service plans, and the associated targets that are within the remit of this scrutiny committee. So the plans set out the specific areas of focus that are associated with the delivery of the Council's annual delivery plan for the coming year. Progressing the annual delivery plan will help us meet our statutory obligations under the Local Government and Elections Act and the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. Both pieces of legislation place a specific duty on the Council in relation to reviewing and setting objectives, keeping performance under review and reporting on performance with a focus on improving the social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being of Vale citizens. So the commitments in our annual delivery plan for next year are reflected in 15 service plans, which are provided for information in the background papers to the report. Those plans show how individual service areas will contribute to achievement and then overall delivery of our 4 wellbeing objectives and how our resources will be deployed to do so. So scrutiny members are asked to review the contributions from services through the planned activities and the proposed performance measures that are relevant to this committee's remit. So following review, members are asked to recommend to Cabinet the planned activities as outlined in the service plans and associated service performance targets as relevant to this committee's remit as the primary means against which performance for the annual delivery plan for 23-24 will be monitored, measured and reported quarterly. And those are set out in Appendix A and B to the report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Paula. Any questions from councillors for Paula? I've got a question, Paula. Just looking through the documents, it talks about participation opportunities, public participation and things of that nature. I was just wondering about not participate. I was just wondering about the process of how this is, how it's written, how it's established. It's not something I'm particularly familiar with. So just wondering if you'd be able to elaborate on that and sort of the different stakeholders that are involved.
I'm not sure I quite understand the question. So you mean the process of participation?
Just generally, sorry, for not being clear. Just in terms of producing this, the different people that are involved and things like that.
Producing the service plans.
Yeah.
Or yeah, okay. Well, it's quite a lengthy process. We undertake a self-evaluation every year in the council, and I believe that came to the Scrutiny Committee, and that helps us to highlight areas for improvement and areas we need to prioritise in the annual delivery plan. As you know, we worked with a range of stakeholders on putting together the annual delivery plan, and that was brought to Scrutiny Committee as well, and members fed into the annual delivery plan and fed comments back to Cabinet, and I believe there were a number of workshops as well that were held with members. There was also a much wider consultation on the annual delivery plan with a range of stakeholders, and I don't know if Tom's still on the call, but he would have been coordinating much of that consultation on the annual delivery plan through his directorate. Once the annual delivery plan is agreed, we then take those priorities and service areas look at those, and they come up with their service plans that outline actions and targets that are needed to achieve those priorities that are set out in the annual delivery plan. Then sitting under those service plans in our directorate, each team also has a team plan which shows how the actions they're going to take to contribute towards achievement of the service plan and the annual delivery plan, and then the corporate plan. And also individual targets are highlighted in individual performance development reviews. So there's a golden thread that goes from the corporate plan all the way down through the annual delivery plan, the service plans, the team plans, and then into these individual performance objectives. I don't know whether that answers your question, Councillor Thomas.
It does, yeah. It's there's a lot of plans and things, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
No,
the good thing is they're all interlinked.
Yeah. I'm relieved to hear it. Thank you for that, Paula. I can't see any other questions for councillors. So if I could have a seconder for noting the two recommendations.
I'll second.
Thank you. Two at the same time. That's very good. Thank you very much for that, Paula. And then agenda item 12. Paula again.
This is our performance reports, which presents our progress at Q3. So that's up until the end of December 2022. And that's progress towards achieving the annual delivery plan for the current year. And as I've just explained, that is aligned to our corporate plan and the wellbeing objectives set out there. So in relation to the planned activities within the remit of the Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee, 99% were attributed a green performance status and 1% was attributed a red status. And of the 5 measures reported, 3 or 60% were given a green status and 2 were given a red status. So there is a presentation at Appendix A, which outlines our performance, and it provides members with the overall performance summary of the annual delivery plan. It provides an overview of achievements specific to your remit across all of the 4 wellbeing objectives. It also provides a performance snapshot, including the overall status of actions and performance measures. And there are hyperlinks to the detailed performance commentary for all actions and measures, including performance exceptions, and then that's embedded within the presentation. So there's also an overview of areas for focus and improvement. So the presentation report uses a traffic light system, the red, amber, green RAG status, and a direction of travel to a performance analysis. And I think that direction of travel is an addition since we last reported this. And that progress is reported for all the key performance indicators and actions by allocating a RAG performance status. For ease of scrutiny, the performance exceptions, that's all of the actions or PIs within the remit of the committee that have a red status. They're presented in Appendix B to the report, and that also includes the direction of travel and a commentary on the performance. And then there's more detailed performance commentary for all actions and measures, and that's provided in Appendix C, and it gives you contextual information should you wish to examine that in a greater level of detail. Again, happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Paula. Any questions from councillors? Just one from me before we finish. So in terms of the red sort of on the traffic light, in terms of turning that into a yellow or green, are there sort of time scales on that, Paula?
Yes, well, obviously, the performance we're looking at is for the current financial year. So I suppose the cutoff for reporting or making progress on those indicators and actions is the end of March. For certain ones, you will find similar actions carried over to the next annual delivery plan and service plans, because some of those will be an area of focus. In this particular instance, two of them relate to Inspire to Achieve and Inspire to Work, and there will not be any further progress there because those were the European funded schemes that we were undertaking within the council, and of course those have come to an end now. What we are hoping, though, that there will be a successor scheme, but we're waiting for the confirmation of funding on that through shared prosperity funding. So again, there's likely to be targets and actions around that in our next plan. There is one in relation to signposting of cultural and arts events, and that shows that progress is being made on that. So I think, I don't know whether Trevor's still on the call. His hand came up, thank you. That's in relation to a survey that needs to be undertaken, Trevor, if I'm correct.
Yeah, a lot of so you'll remember previous reports that have come to this committee where we've spoken about the Arts and Culture Service, and one of the things that came through from that was a need to basically get better at marketing what's available to folks out there. So we've taken that on board. Hopefully folks will start to see there's reference in there about the Gov Service delivery system. So these targeted mail shots that go out to folks talking about the events that we run at the Pavilion at Arts Central and those sorts of things. And what we're doing now is trying to get the interactions with those. So we get reports back from the Gov Service that says how many people are actually clicking on those links and all of that kind of stuff. Because one of the aims of that marketing is to widen access to this provision. What I would say is, you will also have heard us talk about the increase of events that we've been running. A lot of those events are being sold out, and we're getting new partnerships. The Royal College of Welsh Music and Drama, for one, for example, the pilot schemes that are being run at Pavilion, and what we're doing with Arts Central and Berry Library. So I'm really confident that work is starting to come to fruition. So you'll see some positive updates in future on that.
Great. Thank you for that, Trevor and Paula. If there are no more questions from councillors, if I could have a seconder for the two recommendations.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. I see Liz got your hand up. I think in my haste, Paula, I was so excited about the service level activities. I think we might have accidentally passed over agenda item 10. So if we're able to steer back to that as our new sort of final agenda item for the evening, apologies for that. It's been a long week. So agenda item 10, Central South Consortium Annual Local Authority Scrutiny Report.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'll be leading, starting the discussion in terms of the paper. And I am joined tonight by Clara Seary, the Managing Director at Central South, and also Natalie Gould, the Assistant Director for Curriculum and Professional Learning. And we'll be happy to address any questions you might have at the end as well. So I'm conscious that you've had the report prior to the meeting, so I'll just briefly touch on a few overview issues to begin with. And just to say as well, for those of you who are relatively new to the Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee, sort of CSC delivers aspects of school improvement service on behalf of 5 local authorities: Bridgend, Cardiff, Rhondda-Cynon-Taf, Merthyr Tydfil and the Vale. And as part of the papers sent out prior to the meeting, there was an information booklet for elected members outlining background information on CSE. So hopefully that would have explained further the context in relation to the consortium. So in terms of the annual report outlines the work of the consortium undertaken during the last academic year, 2021-22, and also makes reference to the last financial year, April 2021, April 22. And the purpose of the report is to provide an overview of the work of the consortium and to update members how CSC have contributed in partnership with the local authority to raising standards in schools across the Vale. And as part of the report, you will also see references to examples, short case studies, particularly in the professional learning section on how the work has impacted on Vale schools. I'm not going to go through the report in detail, but I'll just touch upon some of the key aspects in the report. The first section deals with the overview of performance, section 3. So that's page 4 onwards. And you will see there's reference to the limited data that we have now due to the cancellation of most of the statutory data due to COVID. But what we have included in the report there in terms of overview performance is an overview of inspection findings undertaken during the last in the last academic year between February and July, and those have already been reported to you in scrutiny previously. We did have 2 schools in Estyn review, and you will see reference there on page 6 that they have been removed from Estyn follow-up category back in December 2021. So that makes reference to St Cyrus and St Illtyds. And then there is reference as well there to value-added data. We have access to ALPS analysis, and you'll see reference to that on 3.5, page 7 of the report. And that shows that performance over time, that value-added data is strong for Vale's secondary schools in relation to GCSE and AS level, and very strong for A level. In terms of section 4 and section 5 of the report, there's reference to support and challenge for schools. There's information here about the work of improvement partners and work programmes of improvement partners. There's reference to the support and monitoring of that's happening in schools, and you will see that most schools in the Vale receive what we call core support. There are a few schools that receive enhanced support, and you will see reference to the 6 schools that at some point during the last academic year received enhanced support, and there's a reference to those schools and progress that they made in section 5.1, page 11 of the report. And there you'll see the progress that they've made over time in relation to their priorities. And there's a reference there to most of them, or 5 out of the 6 report, making strong or better progress against those priorities in their school development plan. There's one school that didn't make satisfactory progress, and you will see a reference. I'm just referring to 5.2 in particular there. You will see a reference to a pre-warning notice that the local authority has given to one school. Section 6 onwards provides a lot of comprehensive information about the professional learning and support that schools have been able to access. Again, I'm not going to go through this in detail because there's an awful lot of information here about collaboration work, engagement in regional projects, professional learning, lit for literacy, numeracy, digital learning, curriculum for Wales, which links with our first presentation tonight. There's reference to Welsh, which again links back to the presentation we had at Scrutiny in December as well. Post 16, and then some bespoke support and leadership development as well. And this is where you will see, as I mentioned earlier, some short case studies to exemplify the impact of that work. In terms of section 7, there's reference to the work on equity, and the key document, the Enabling Equity, an excellent document that underpins all aspects of CSE's work. And there's also information in this section on the use of the Pupil Development Grant and how it's used across Wales schools. Again, that links to a previous theme that we have had in Scrutiny, where we have considered the use of the Pupil Development Grant. Section 8, and again this refers to Appendix G as well in particular, makes reference to how work in CSE contributes to Vale priorities. So you will see information there about a range of aspects, from vulnerable learners, pupil development grant, Welsh curriculum, for example, well-being, attendance and relationships and sexuality education, how in the CSE and from priorities that have come from the Vale and which feed into our business plan in CSE, how we've supported the Vale of Glamorgan and their priorities. There's also reference in section 9 to value for money and reference to core funding and grants. And in particular, I'd just like to draw your attention to the LA Annex. And this is one example again where we're supporting a key priority for the local authority. The funding there was used to deliver and evaluate the framework on embedding a whole school approach for emotional and mental well-being, and there was a programme in place and over 50 schools engaged with that programme. There's also reference in this section to intervention budgets that we use to support schools, particularly those causing any concern. And you can see during the last academic year that there's just one example there where we funded a consultant governor to support a particular school, to support them in relation to the work of the governing body. And then the last section in the report makes reference to some sharing of practice. Obviously, there's a lot there in those 2 pages, a lot to reflect what's in the report itself, but then there's reference as well to things like blogs, podcasts, where there's specific schools in the Vale that have contributed to those production of sharing of good practice, whether it's a blog, whether it's a podcast and so forth. So that just gives you a flavour of the range of sharing good practice and strategies that we use to promote practice within the Vale, but also across the region. So I appreciate it's a very brief overview of the report, but I'm happy to answer or respond to any questions or comments. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Caris. So the councillors have any questions? Got 3 people to answer. It's more than usual. So Councillor Goodjohn.
Thank you. Thanks for this. It's great. A massive report. With the schools working together, has that actually improved the educational outcomes for children and young people in the Vale? Is there any more information you can give us on that?
I'm not sure. Do you want me to start? I don't know whether Clara and Natalie want to come in here. In terms of the range, the range is vast in terms of supporting school to school working. So in terms of sharing practice, we have got some examples within the Vale where we've targeted specific support, so to individual schools to improve key areas of practice, and that's something where yes, we can demonstrate there's been impact on standards, and yes, there's been impact on provision and leadership of the school. There's also a lot of informal sharing, good practice as well, and things that sort of we promote. For example, we've got some schools who have developed playlists to support Cymraeg Campus, the initiative that we saw back in December. I don't know if you recall that. It's a programme to support developing of Welsh in a sort of outside the classroom. So we've got schools where we've got strong practice, and they have developed then sort of resources that are being used by other schools across the local authority and across the region as well. So schools are being used in different ways. We've also got some people from schools in the Vale who are acting as lead practitioners. And again, they're providing specific support for individual schools. That could be a bespoke support, that could be brokered by the improvement partner, or that could also be something on the regional professional learning programme. So there's there's lots of different ways that we use the school to school support.
That's great. Thank you for the details.
Thank you, Emma. I can't see any other councillors with their hands up. I've just got a question on 9.1. It says in 21-22 the consortium received over 3.5 million from the 5 LAs. And maybe Rhiannon could comment on this as well in terms of, is that as good value for money as we could be getting? I mean, it's probably a difficult question for people from the CSE to answer, but is it not just another layer of bureaucracy? I mean, I've spoken to some teachers who are concerned that it's another layer of bureaucracy, and that money that the 5 LAs are sending in could be much better spent by the councils. What's your thoughts on that, Clara?
I'll start off. Obviously, you would expect me to say that it is good value for money, and I think one of the strengths of the model is that it's bringing together that capacity right across the region. So it isn't just schools in one local authority. They are able to learn from schools across the region. And there's that scope to get support from schools outside the Vale. The amount of money that comes into the consortium, a lot of that money actually goes back out into schools. So it's using that money to provide those lead practitioners, to facilitate that school to school support. So it isn't, we don't have millions of pounds worth of staff, but we do use the staff within the schools. And I think one of the strengths of the model is being able to identify where that good practice is. You've heard from Caris throughout the year, and I think there is a real level of detail and understanding of what's happening within those schools, so that support can be targeted to the needs of the school, and also identifying where that support can come from. So whether it's a school within the Vale, whether it's a school outside the Vale, and how we use those practitioners to support those developments. And I think we do quite a bit of work around demonstrating that it's value for money, and that's something that our joint committee do hold us to account on. So there are a range of reports, they'll be coming your way shortly, Councillor Birch, so you'll be able to have more detail around that as well.
Thank you, Clara. If I go just ask Councillor Birch as well, your thoughts on that.
I don't know that I'm going to comment exactly on CSC, but I would point out that for those of you who are newer to the education world, that even if we didn't have CSC, we would still have a layer of experts who go on subjects or you know, about specifically school improvement, who go into schools and perform the same function. CSC was set up by Welsh Assembly as and all education authorities are part of these consortia in order to bring together as much expertise as possible in order to concentrate it, so that we would be able to bring best practice and best practitioners together under a central organisation. So I think that there's always going to be a need for that kind of organisation. And CSC, I mean, Clara's just explained to us exactly what its function is and what it does. And I think that, you know, the people who are working within the consortia at the moment and are where the consortia are going into schools appear to be happy with that. I haven't seen feedback that would express otherwise.
Okay, thank you, Rhiannon and Clara. Any other questions from councillors? You won't get 3 people again answering questions, so make the most of it if you have a question. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for coming in and talking us through that. It's really appreciated. So there's only one recommendation, just to note the report. If any councillor would like to second that.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So that I've covered everything now. We got there in the end. Thank you, Karis, Natalie and Clara, for coming in. Thank you for everyone for being here and attending and taking part and asking questions. We'll see you next month. Good night. Good
night, everyone.
Good night all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.